That Mzee was first and foremost a family man. Nothing interfered with his family life. And I think when he became president in 2003, there were many officials who didn't understand, even as president, Mzee's family came first to him. But when they got to understand that, then his operations started moving very smoothly. So even from 2003, his grandchildren were always in State House. Even on a working day, if they were on school holiday, they would be in State House. So his priority was always his family.
On his father's health, Jimmy said his father had been ailing for some time.
He had been ailing for about 2 or 3 years. And the last maybe 3 months were quite difficult. But really, it is the last 1 month where things started deteriorating very fast. But he put up, quite a good battle. But in the end, because of age and other factors, the end came quite fast. Yeah. But he was comfortable throughout, and at 90, he has lived a long life.
Jimmy's wife, Caroline, echoed his sentiments, eulogizing her father-in-law as a great leader, father, grandfather, and mentor.
So we'll be consoling each other, talking to each other, and knowing that Mzee has been here for 90 plus years, we understand that God gave us a great gift. So we don't take it for granted, although maybe it's the grandchildren were hit the hardest since they are younger, but with time we are going to be able to bear the burden and the void that Mzee has left. But we are grateful.
Yeah, Jimmy now says he may take over his father's political baton. Lillian Muli, Citizen TV.
All right, that is a sad mourning their father, and as the country gets another opportunity to mourn the former president, those are the pictures as they join from Valley Road to Kenyatta Avenue, that connection near Integrity Center, to continue with that important procession. But even as son Jimmy Kibaki mourns the father, there's another friend who is mourning a real friend whom they have had so much to share. That is a close friend and associate of former President Mwai Kibaki, is describing the late president as a gentleman par excellence, a visionary economist and a man who shaped the destiny of many in Kenya. Joe Wanjui, a golfing buddy of the third president, dismissed the repeated characterization of the late president as a fence-sitter, saying the former president was decisive and had been misread by some observers. Wanjui mourned his close friend in an interview with the Royal Media Services Group Editorial Director Linus Kaikai.
Mwai Kibaki, the late president, what was his personality like?
I met him from before he was a minister, when he was just joining. He's an assistant minister. So I have seen him grow throughout up to the end. And similarly with him.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the biggest lesson Mwai Kibaki leaves for Kenyans?
There's a lot. I think he did a lot for this country. But also it depends on who is looking at it. The people who are working close to him, they'll see it differently. The people who read about what he has done will perceive him differently depending on how he's communicated. He was civil, polite all the way through, but when you see that, you can also tell when someone is angry despite all that. You can understand when you are not delivering. But if you are not delivering, you'll hear it from him, but in a different way. I've never known him to show the anger. But you will know when he has shown it. All of us have shown our anger, even though we say we don't show it, but we do.
Right.
But he's good. He's a very good man.
Right. In 2002, 2003, it's been variously described that you were in the engine room of the election that made Mwai Kibaki president. And of course we know the unfortunate road accident that just preceded his victory. and then the subsequent illness that basically made it difficult for his first year in office. Describe to us your recollections around that period.
That one affected him. And as you remember, even in a wheelchair, he did occasionally work with that in the beginning. That didn't stop him. But it affected him. But towards the end.
And there is a lot of positive reviews about President Mwai Kibaki's economic record. And there's this widely acknowledged position that he did improve things for the country. And the question to you, who are his very close friends, is how did he do it?
I think he used this bit we were saying, which sometimes you have to leave. For example, you may find a team coming to Kibaki, telling him a story of what they do. He will listen to you all. He will ask questions that helps him understand the situation. It may look like a lot of foolish stuff you're saying, but you will never see that from him. Because I suppose the attitude he takes, and I take it sometimes for different reasons, is that that's your business. You should know it better than me. So if I'm going to comment on it or criticize it, I better know a lot more. So the best thing is just to listen to you. If I cannot add value to what you have, then I leave it like that. If I can help a businessman, I will help a businessman. But that means I'll put my ideas on a table. He might like my ideas better than what he had. But you may deceive yourself and think that in fact it is. And when he sleeps over it, he discovers that it is not. So you've got to be very careful in selling your ideas or shooting other people's ideas down. I'm doing right.
All right. That is one John WANJUI, who was also the Chancellor of the University of Nairobi for many years and a close confidant of President Mwai Kibaki. And there's quite a bit of tribute in the papers today as you look at the Daily Nation. On page 4 of the Daily Nation, Uhuru leads Kenyans in paying their last respects to Kibaki at Parliament, and the body of Kenya's third president will lie in state at Parliament buildings for 3 days. Then you see, excuse me, in pictures of the different leaders that converged at Parliament, including President Kenyatta arriving. You also see Deputy President William Ruto, Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka, Speaker Justin Muturi, leader of Majority Amos Kimunya, who we're expecting to be joining us shortly. And there's a story here that it says that Kibaki avoided military wear. Even though he was a commander-in-chief, Kibaki eschewed the fancy traditions and practices of the military. Not once in his 10 years at the helm did he put on the ceremonial military tunic. By not putting on the tunic, Kibaki broke a strong tradition that had been established by his two predecessors, President Kenyatta and President Moi, and perfected by his successor, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Interestingly, it was during Kibaki's watch as Commander-in-Chief that Kenya went to war in, excuse me, in Somalia. All right, so again on your screen, those are the pictures on Uhuru Highway as they make their procession under the expressway back to Parliament for the second day. And still on the Daily Nation, various stories that have been captured, including Kenyans show up in droves to view Kibaki's body at Parliament, including some that are a bit emotional upon sighting the body of the late president. There's also a story here of the property Kibaki fought hard to keep. He was the first ex-president to appear in court. He accused a rival group of directors of trying to grab building. It is not the norm to have senior government official appear in court, let alone a former president. But on the 23rd of September 2013, former President Mwai Kibaki appeared before the Environment and Land Court in Nyeri to testify in a suit involving a multi-million building in Nyeri town. And Mzee Kibaki was giving his evidence in a matter in which he was claiming back ownership of the commercial property, of course, the registration number given there. So appearing before Justice Anthony Omboyo, Mr. Kibaki said his firm, Mathingira Wholesalers Company, the owners of the property, of course, had been taken over by imposter directors. I want us to take a short break. On your return, we'll be speaking to Leader of Majority at the National Assembly, that is Amos Kimunya, and who served with President Kibaki as a minister in different dockets, including finance and also land. And also we'll be speaking to the governor of Nakuru County, that is WANJUI, is also in studio, served at some point as an assistant minister, and will be telling us about the experience doing so after the break. But to leave you with these live images for you to continue watching that procession as it makes its way to Parliament.
Mwongeleshe. Mimi hajaifanya kampeni. Unajua ni kwa accelerate ni mdogo mdogo.
Enda tu taratibu sasa.
No. Wapi? Oh, shit. Wawero niko na shoot. Enda huko mahali polisi wako. Si mimi. Ingia left. Ingia hapo. Haya. Ngojea sasa Thank you Leila. A good director Leila. Brandon. Go.
All right, we apologize for that challenge with the signal as the procession of President Mwai Kibaki's body makes its way back to Parliament. But as we were to rectify that, I want to reintroduce the panelists that I have here in studio. I have Amos Kimunya, who is the Leader of Majority at the National Assembly. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am well.
Uh-huh.
Right, and karibu sana to the show as we have this conversation.
Asante.
And on this other side, I have Governor WANJUI, the governor of Nakuru. Good morning.
Morning, and glad to be here.
Great. And let me begin from the start as we wait for the pictures to get back. Honorable Amos Kimunya, yes, you served with the president for 2 terms, right? As a cabinet minister. But maybe you can tell us your first experience with the president and how you got to know him.
I met the late President Kibaki in around about 1994. I mean, meeting in terms of, we all knew about him, we knew him, but in terms of meeting on a one-on-one and having to sit down and socialize and get to know another, 1994. So it's been quite close to 30 years.
Yeah, 28
knowing
now.
one another. And we started on the golfing circles. We started, the social circles. And then, we would sit down, and I realized he doesn't want to engage people on petty issues. On serious issues, he will engage you. And around that time, I was also very active in the accounting circles with the Institute. Culminating in me chairing the Institute around 1999. So we would discuss matters on the economy, and he was then, if you remember, the leader of the opposition, So we would end up just getting engaged, what's happening in public, what's happening around. And by 2002, our friendship had grown to a point that he said, I've seen you, what you've been doing with the Accounting Institute. I've seen you as chairman of this club, the Muthaiga Golf Club. I've seen the kind of things you're doing. We should be in the next government together. And I said, no, me, I'm not a politician. Politics is a dirty game. And, I remember sowing those words in the company of the late Michuki, George Mohoho, and Solomon Karanja, sitting around at the table. And the late Michuki quipped, are you saying us old men, we are in some dirty game? And it's the kind of thing you'd want to think, how I wish I could retract those words. Yeah. But, as they said, then after that, they encouraged me and told me, this, whatever you're doing is exactly politics, but now from a different angle. This one is on the professional, you're doing some public service with the accountants, with the Muthaiga Golf Club, and, it's all voluntary on top of your work. But now we want you to move to serving the wider public. They will not be as thankful. 1 + 1 will not be equal to 2. There's lots of intrigues. There's lots of sibling rivalry. All those things. And I was like, so why are you telling me to move from my comfort zone to some more complicated? Right. But he had his way of, over time persuading you. And I said, fine, I'll go for it. And I believe the other person who we had this conversation with around that time was the Senator KIBAKI'S. And we then ended up, getting into the campaign. Not now campaigning for him, but also campaigning for ourselves. Right. And between April of 2002 and December, I had already now transformed myself from this corporate person who doesn't want to get into politics, to being there, dancing with the, with the wananchi huko ground. The kind of things we do. And 2002, end of December, I think to around 28th, the elections are announced. 3rd of January, I'm appointed into his cabinet. Right. And so then after that, it's like, what am I supposed to do in the Ministry of Lands? I've never known what matters to do. And he said, it's management. And I'll support you. Just getting there. And you remember the challenge then at that point was lots of land grabbing. Yeah? Right. Land had been taken away and everything. So said, at least start with that one. Then the reforms that were required. And he did that for 2 years, 3 years, 2002 to 2005, 2003 to 2006. And then moved into finance. Then trade, then transport, and I really enjoyed the whole 10 years. Right. It was the most fulfilling time of my life. And we'll be talking in detail about that. But also to note here, you are fairly very young compared to President Kibaki at that time and Minister Michuki, right? Yes. Great, and you'll be telling me... In fact, the three that I mentioned, both the Michuki, Solomon Karanja, George Mohoho, because, and then there was also WANJUI is another. WANJUI was not quite as regular in the club as because of living away in Limuru or far. But generally, I fitted into that group better than with my colleagues. Wow. My age mates. And I used to get fascinated by when they're talking, they're reminiscing their old days in Makerere, what happened, and you pick up bits and pieces. And when I think they realize this young man is so interested in us, and also there was the late Nick Muriuki, who was also within those circles. And I enjoyed their company and got to really socialize with them and pick lots of things, lessons that I've valued. Very interesting. And we'll be getting more of you this morning. Governor Kinyanjui, how did you meet the president and what was your relationship like?
Okay, so once again, a big thank you for being here and also the honor of remembering our late third president, Mwai Kibaki. I want to say that I was elected into parliament in the year 2007. And as you will remember, that was a very difficult election. And therefore, my first interaction was in the context of what was happening in the country at that particular time. So my victory was declared maybe around 27th or thereabout. But soon after, there was eruption of violence in Nakuru and much of Rift Valley. So at around 5th of January, so I was called and told to come to State House. And so Mzee wanted to know what is happening, what can be done. So when I came here, I was only 34 years then. So when I came to State House, of course, the usual bureaucracy, but finally we got sitting and we were there for like 3-4 hours. And the main issue was, what can we do? And as you may want to recall that time, and the country was very divided. And there was this dislocation of people from all over, especially in the Rift Valley. And the thing was, how can we be able to avert this then, but also in future? And I think some of those conversations later informed the quest for the new constitution, and also ensuring that stability and all those other issues came. But soon after, I was also appointed the Assistant Minister for Roads. And as you know, that his heart was really in infrastructure. And therefore, every so often, he wanted to know, what are you doing about this road? And in particular, he had a lot of interest in roads that connect with our neighbors, be it Ethiopia, be it Tanzania, and all those other places, because he perceived roads in the contexts of the economy. Like if you're talking of connection between Kenya and Ethiopia, you have 120 million population. So the question was, why should they be getting their finished products from across the Gulf instead of Kenya? So he was very concerned about it. And I think throughout that entire period, every so often he would ask for briefs on what you're doing about a particular road, and he would get very agitated at the pace within which government projects sometimes take off. But I think what is important is that he was an avid reader of briefs. Even if you gave a 30-page brief and he did not understand a particular page, he would call later and want to know, what did you mean here? This one is not adding up, and so on. So I think the growth in infrastructure is directly attributable to looking at it from purely an economic point of view. How do we connect markets to farms? How do we reduce the cost of transport? How do we ensure that we create jobs? And maybe also one thing that I really remember about our interactions with the late president, he always had a notebook. And if he spoke for an hour and he did not write anything, then it didn't make sense. So his notebook was very specific. Right. So he was very good. But he looked at life.
I'm listening. Or you're making a point.
Yes. Otherwise, he would even doze. But the point is, he was very sure what he wanted. And sometimes, you know, in politics, we end up doing too many things or fighting too many wars. But he knew what was important for the country, and therefore did not want to distract himself with what he didn't consider important.
So tell me about your appointment as an assistant minister. How did it come by, and how was it delivered?
Okay, first, I personally did not have an interaction with him before that. Okay. So there was nothing personal. I was actually driving on my way from Nairobi back to Nakuru, and I had it on the radio. And maybe the thing here to note is that there was, Kibaki believed in the young people. Even if you look at the people he engaged, he believed in the hope of the young people. So what he would do, like any professional, is headhunting. These are the people who've been elected from Nyandarua or Narok. So he would go through the CVs and he would say, this person would make a good list. And I think really that is where we need to go. Sometimes in a country, if you're not good at identifying talent, that's how we also end up losing the same talent. Right. So I would not talk of lobbying or prior friendship or golfing buddyship, that kind of thing. It was purely shall I say, professional.
Okay, interesting. So now, Honorable Kimunya, for yours, at least you can trace the interaction and eventually how you ended up being in government. So let's just jump a little bit to the second term where the likes of WANJUI are being picked. I would assume that at that time you were one of the close confidants and people that he would consult. How did he arrive at his lists of cabinet?
I think, like Governor Lee has said, there was a bit of Kibaki had something about looking into where we will be in the next 20 years. Not just in terms of the plans, but what kind of leaders will be there in those 20 years. And you don't wait for those leaders to develop themselves. You pick them and you start developing them. And remember his emphasis on free primary education. When he came in and said, people must be educated. A nation that is not educated is going nowhere. Okay? So let's start building those frameworks for the future by first of all educating the people. Then start developing the capacity, professionalizing the public service, appointing young people into government, headhunting people from the private sector and bringing them into the public sector. And all that was being done in terms of preparing the future, in terms of what kind of leadership will be there in the future. Because he believed there's no point in doing so many things, and then there's nobody to take them into the next level. So that's how people like Lee ended up getting into government. And also myself, because, he looked at me as a young chap. I need to bring him. He could have brought his colleagues who have always been with him. But then what value does it add to just sit around the same people and then you all retire together? Who are you going to leave the enterprise with? And he also had something about Nakuru. Lee may not know. In fact, he used to call Nakuru Nyeikuru. And all the way to the end, he never called Nakuru Nakuru. It's like, Nyeikuru. We need somebody from Nyeikuru. And Nakuru has suffered, because of Nakuru and Nyandarua being in the, they are seen, they are outside the core central, Mount Kenya, right? So Nakuru is like, it's neither Rift Valley nor central. And hence was always marginalized in terms of appointment. So anyone being appointed from Nakuru, people look at, must be a Kalenjin. But then there's a whole, like 50% or more than 50% of the people in Nakuru are from the Kikuyu diaspora. And we raised some of those issues. And he said, I know. So, but we are glad that when Lee came, he didn't disappoint. And I think there was P.S. Murege as well, who had also migrated and others. But one point that Lee mentioned about the emphasis on infrastructure and removing the small things that hinder progress. I do remember one time when we were discussing with the then president of ADB, Donald Kaberuka, who had, who owed a lot of his being in the bank to President Kibaki campaigning for him within the African heads. We were looking at this Namanga to Kitengela Road, to the river road. And African Development Bank was financing. But, the usual bureaucracy. We need an environmental impact assessment, we need ABCD. And meeting between the 3 or 4 of us, and Kibaki said, why can't we start this road? We've already started the section from Nairobi to Thika, because the Thika highway has nothing to do with Thika. It's part of Namanga, connecting all the way to South Africa and all the way to northern Kenya. But people think of it as Thika, as if it's a small section in central Kenya. It's part of an international network. So we've started this bet on Thika, but we need to take it all the way to Namanga so it can connect with Tanzania. And we started talking of, sir, we're waiting for the environmental impact assessment. And he said, what environment is being changed by this road? There's an existing road. We are only widening it. what environment is going to change? Is the environment going to change because the road is changing in dimensions? You know, they say, you people, bure kabisa, and you know, the way we were dismissed.
Right.
So Kaberuka tells me, now, what do we do? Mzee is annoyed. So, because he just told us, bure kabisa, and walked out. Then we reorganized ourselves. Then we said, can we have a few more minutes of your time? He said, yeah. Now not in the office. You've met him. And he said, we have thought about it, and that environment, we will tell those people to fast track it so by next week. Yeah? Let them look at, as you have advised.
Right.
And he said, okay, now we can talk. Now tell me about the road. Tell me about this other one. But you see, we are going to be dismissed because you are bringing small petty issues about why a road cannot be done because of something you are calling EIA. And he's saying, I've known that road since it was done many years ago. Yeah? The same antelopes that are crossing there will be crossing. Yeah? What other new things are... So I loved that practicality.
Right.
Then this other bit of that putting emphasis on, you know, most of those projects will be on software, you know. We want capacity building and all those things. How long are we going to build this capacity? Shouldn't we be using this money to actually do the road, to do the water, yeah? Things that Wananchi can see, right? And we shifted that, and you will see...
So capacity building on staff of the government or what?
You know, let me tell you, most of these government projects in the past were all about, you know, people traveling, getting per diems, and, you know, so you find a project is funded, and it's all about, you know, capacity building, I don't know what assessment, consultancies, but you don't see a tangible thing at the end. And he said, that's not the way you develop a country, yeah? We already have enough capacity of the people. We need to make sure that things are moving on the ground, okay? Things like we need trips to New York, to Washington, to go and discuss a project. So we have a World Bank office here. Just go to this World Bank office, and these are the same officers you're going to meet in New York. Save that money and do it here. So practical things like that. When he had to get his you know, after the accident, he had some metal plate inserted and all that. And I know we all were like, no, we must prepare for him to go to London to have it removed and all that. And he said, you want me to go to London? How many hours? 8 hours in our plane. Don't we have a hospital here? And unbeknown to us, he had organized with the, I think it was either with Mutaura or the controller then, not Matere, the next, to have an admission done at Nairobi Hospital. So as we are planning for London, and the next thing we know, he's in Nairobi Hospital. It's been done and say, ilifanywa. And I'm okay. You people can continue going huko mnaenda, me I'll be here. I mean that's the kind of practical person I remember. And you know, it's and as a result of that, he said, perhaps you people, what you need to do is now to start putting more resources in our public hospitals. And I then ended up giving more money to the Armed Forces Memorial Hospital for modernization. And if you go there, it's modern. And I like exactly what also President Uhuru is now doing in terms of modernizing for the military hospitals. Because if you can do that, even some of us don't need, if you can't fit in Nairobi Hospital, or state officers who feel vulnerable, you know, don't want to go to a public place and hence won't go out, can actually go to this military hospital. I mean, that's how other countries have developed. So I'm just getting these ideas as they come. So there's so much to talk about this man, and you can't quite put it in like, it happened day one, day two, day three.
Sure.
But those small bits and pieces that keep reminding us of the humility of the man and the greatness of the man in terms of the thinking and the rationale for doing things and the emphasis on things. It's like you never develop by spending all your salary on luxurious items. Get a house and decide, do you want to live up country or do you want to live in Nairobi? If you want to live in Nairobi, get your house in Nairobi. Don't waste money on 2 houses because you're not going to use that house. Unataka kuonyesha watu tu nimejenga nyumba kubwa, but you're not using it. Yet that money you could be using it for investment to employ a few other people. I mean, that's the kind of practical advice. Yeah.
Okay, and for you, Governor Lee, so you're here as an assistant minister. Of course, at that time, ministers and assistant ministers would come from Parliament. What was the role of an assistant minister in a ministry, but also in engaging with the president on his vision, knowing that, of course, there's someone who is senior to you?
Okay, I think it's good to reflect on how things were exactly then. After the 2007, shall I say, acrimonious sort of election, there was finally the Grand Coalition government. And the architecture of the Grand Coalition government, you found a minister was, say, from ODM, and the assistant minister was from PNU then, and vice versa. And that, in my view, was very important, because I think that was really the first point of healing, because this politician would not talk. But now you find yourself, in my case, my first minister was KIBAKI'S. And remember, we have just come from a period that was very difficult. It's unfortunate he passed on soon after, but then I had Franklin Bett. And I want to confirm that that structure in government had a very big role in bridging the gap. Because now you're forced to talk because of this road or this bill that is coming to Parliament. You have questions to go and answer. I think that's the first point. The second issue in terms of the structure of government at that particular point is that there was a lot of focus on delivery. So if you had a road connecting Namanga to the river, Isiolo to Merile, there was a lot of focus. It has to be finished by September and all that. And maybe really what I would want to concur with Kimunya, Kibaki had this essence of like time is going, and government projects have a way of being there in perpetuity.
Yes.
We're looking for an AIE, we are waiting for this letter, we're waiting for no objection, we're waiting for public participation, and 5 years can go that way. And therefore, his statement often that EOC Amana just simply meant that's not where we should waste our time. That's not where we should, and that really meant that if we are saying by August we need to open a particular road or we need to do something else, he was there and ready definitely to do it. So the essence of just mere passage of time, and I think this is very important for many of us who are in elective politics, to appreciate that a day gone won't come again. So we can waste it going round and round, saying stories, big English, without any delivery to the people. But allow me to say one important thing. I think from the year 2002, when President Kibaki got into office, you will recall it was after a long struggle, the multi-party in 1992.
Right.
And the election was not necessarily one you would call where there was a lot of concurrence. So the year 2002 came and swept what you may call like the KANU leadership. But what is important is that people expected that when President Kibaki is in office, he would actually, let me use the word revenge for lack of a better word, on the people who were there before. And it's good to remember the tradition in Africa is that when one president comes, another one has to look for a home in exile. And this is the case in many of the countries around. But Kibaki set a very important tradition in Kenya and I think also for Africa. So when he came, Amos will tell you, a lot of the advice he got from the people around him was on a hit-back kind of a mission. But he was very firm. Don't touch anything to do with the former president. It was him to deal with it. And he ensured former President Moi was given his dignity for the entire 10 years that he was in office. And I'm saying this because also as we move on, this is an election we are going and another one and another one, that tradition has become a very big issue around Africa. Every time an African president is ending his term, they are thinking of where to go because they cannot fit in their own country. But I'm saying this is the only country where we have set a tradition that we can say we are proud of. And our former presidents have had a space in our society and they are ready to work on. Now, there were moments when that got to a bit of a strain. And I recall in the year 2010, when the new constitution was now coming, and now the divisions were coming out rather clearly. There was a no, there was a yes. And there was every indication that former President Moi was leaning towards the no, ostensibly because of church-related position and so on. Then President Kibaki, being in government and the head of state, was in the yes. And I recall on a couple of days he would call me and try and send me to go and persuade former President Moi, because he did not anticipate how it would demonstrate even to the nation that him and his predecessor are taking two different sides. Eventually, I did not succeed on that mission, but it just went far to demonstrate how he would bend backward to ensure that there was a good and comfortable working relationship with the immediate former president. Amos will tell you there were many times when consultations were necessary, and it did happen. And I think one of the things we probably really would want to emphasize is the issue of he was very consultative in everything he did, big or small, legal or otherwise. He would always consult. Then lastly, on what Amos is talking about, government bureaucracy. Government is very rich in bureaucracy. And I recall there was a time we were called with former PS Kamau, who later now became a CS. And we went to his Othaya. He was actually complaining about his road. So at this level, he was talking now as the MP for Othaya. And after, the normal bureaucracies, we were waiting for this letter that has waiting for another letter that is waiting for Treasury. So he was there very frustrated and asking, so who do I report to? I am the head. Who do I report to? This is how all constituencies go through. But I am saying maybe the point is he had a very high sense of time.
What did you tell him?
Well, you have to go and change how you're doing things and make sure the road is delivered one way or the other. And the people of Othaya know that from that time, the road started working. And I think this is also the lesson to all of us who are in government today. What can be done today, let it not be done tomorrow. It should be done today. Let Kenyans not suffer even one more day for what can be delivered today.
We have so much to talk about, and I want us to take a short break so that we can continue with this. And at this point in time, the body of the late president is now at Parliament buildings being prepped for the members of the public to begin to stream in to have an opportunity to pay their last respects. I'm here in studio with the leader of majority, Amos Kimunya, who served as the cabinet minister in the 2 terms of President Kibaki, and also have Governor WANJUI, who served as an MP and also assistant minister in the 2nd term of President Kibaki. Stay tuned.